Hi everybody. I'm here today to talk to you about what you're missing about mobile. I was a technical author for a long time, well over 10 years, and I'm now a consultant for Mecon, and a lot of my job is about helping businesses to respond and react to the new challenges in front of them. And mobile is obviously a big part of that. You may remember me from a presentation at UA Europe last year about mobile, and probably most of today's presentation is going to be explaining to you all the reasons why I was wrong last year, which is kind of good for the soul, I think, confessing all the things you were wrong about. So I'm going to be talking today about various myths and misconceptions about mobile content and what you can do about those. What are the arguments you can take back to work to tell your employers or to explain why mobile needs to be a priority. But first of all, I'm going to show you a picture of a fridge. When I was researching this presentation, all the other presentations I watched had a fridge, so I don't want to buck the trend. But the fridge is also a good example of why mobile is tricky, because we don't really know what it is. Because is it touch screen? Maybe. Is it for people on the go? Not necessarily. Is it really small devices? So we're already having to wrangle something that we can't even really define. So that's potentially problematic. And the other reason that I won't shut up about mobile is that I still see even quite big companies getting it quite badly wrong. So Sky have put a lot of effort into the multi-screen experience. If you've ever used Sky Go to watch telly on your mobile, your phone, it's a seamless multi-device experience. But they didn't feel that was necessary when it came to their user assistance, because the first thing you do these days, when your broadband router goes down, you use your generous data allowance to use your mobile device to troubleshoot it. And that doesn't work with Sky because there's too much left to right swiping. It's a really poor use of the real estate. It's not been well optimized for mobile at all. So there's something kind of a bit heartening about the fact that a company with so much expertise in the multi-device experience can still get it wrong. But I think mistakes like this are born out of a set of myths about mobile that I'm going to go through some of them with you. There used to be 7 myths. This was a longer presentation that's been cut down, and I like 7 better because it has like more mythological quality. But 6 is what we've got. So the first of these is that it's not for us. And I come across this with technical clients quite a lot, that my business is way too specialized, too complex, too basically hardcore to be bothered with mobile devices, which are really just for email and Candy Crush. And that as a result, nobody's going to want to do that on a mobile device. And both of these, I think, are erroneous. Just as I was preparing, I came across an article from a magazine aimed at GPs, talking about how the NHS has spent £1.2 million on iPhones and iPads. It wasn't a brilliant bit of procurement, I have to admit, because I think it worked out that each device cost about 450 quid. And I'm kind of team Android anyway, so I think they should have spent 99 quid on a Motorola Moto G, but let's not go into that. So the sort of general response to this was basically bar humbug Candy Crush. And I think that's an attitude that really is going to hold us back, because of all the fields that are starting to exploit mobile, healthcare is probably one of, at the forefront. So, and it's an example of how much change is coming our way based on the mobile revolution. So mobile health is a growing industry, and what's happening is that essentially cheap, affordable, super powerful computers are starting to deliver healthcare to the developing world. The image at the bottom there is a portable ultrasound that will fit in your pocket. There's an eye examination kit up there that again enables people to opticians to deliver eye care in places that don't even have clean running water, and potentially addressing the problem of 80% of blindness in the developing world is potentially curable. So these are amazing things that are happening. And I think the best way to think about mobile and to understand why we need to start reacting to it in the TechComs community is to stop thinking in terms of expensive phones and to start thinking in terms of really, really cheap, very powerful computers. And that's what's called disruptive innovation. If those of us that remember the PC revolution, personal computers weren't necessarily better than the mainframes that came before them, but they were cheaper, they were more widely available, and they were easier to use, and that just could swathe through everything that came before. So I think realistically few industries are going to go unchanged. The products that you're supporting as writers and the way that you're having to deliver content is not going to go unchanged. There are businesses that may not survive. Thinking, if you want an example of how mobile is disruptive, think about Uber taxis, if you have Uber taxis where you live. There was a time when if you wanted a taxi, you had to phone someone up, explain where you were, put up with various falsehoods about where that taxi was and how long it was going to be. And the fact that mobile phones have geolocation and they have instant payment capabilities means that all of a sudden the dynamic, the infrastructure changes. And mobile is also everywhere in sort of serious business as well, for want of a better word. So mining, for example, people are starting to use mobile technology to track their employees working alone in dangerous locations and to supply them with the content that they need to maintain the machinery and the technology that they're looking at. So if you believe that your business is too specialized, too serious, too difficult, too complex to work on a mobile device, you're almost certainly wrong. And if you're right, you should probably still worry, because somebody's going to work out how to do that serious, special, complex work on a mobile device, and then you'll be out of a job. But it's not too late. Even if you've not started yet, it's not too late. And for the rest of this presentation, I'm hopefully going to be arming you with information and arguments that mean that you can start embracing mobile for the opportunity that it is. So first up, we need to think about how we need to do some research, and the keynote this morning I thought was a very salutary call to do more testing with users and to start to exploit the feedback coming into us through social networks, to start understanding how users could benefit from mobile and look at how not doing it might be hurting the business, and start monitoring what people are saying about you and how that relates to their mobile needs. But this is all well and good. The myth two is that it's too hard. So you may well understand all of this. You may be desperate to deliver content to mobile devices, but the proliferation of screen resolutions and platforms and languages on top of the complexity of the product that you're supporting is just a really daunting prospect. And you and your small team, or you as a lone author, you're busting a gut to get various PDFs out of the door every year, and the opportunity to step back and understand what you need to do next is really, really hard. But to a certain extent, we kind of make our own problems sometimes. So this example is actually from a company called MyAppBuilder.com that sells app building applications. They've restricted scrolling. They've restricted the automatic width of the table in order to make it behave like an app, and rendered that table completely unusable, so you can't even see how much the product actually costs. If you take the CSS away, the HTML actually displays quite nicely on a mobile device. Now, I'm not for a minute saying that we can all just dispense with CSS and go home early, But it does kind of illustrate the point that sometimes the solutions lie in removing some of the complexity rather than adding more complexity on top of it. So as far as getting started is concerned, as a DITA consultant, obviously I'm a big advocate of structured authoring. The tools are getting cheaper and easy to use all the time. If you want to create, if you have an Oxygen license on your, as a lone author, you can use the EPUB plugin from the DITA Open Toolkit. It's basic, but it works. But even for those of us not working with DITA, there is still the option of affordable and usable app builders. And really when it comes down to it, structure and good quality of writing is more important than specific tools. And I was talking to a lady yesterday who was working in a DITA workshop, but working with AuthorIt and talking about how she was thinking about chunking and modularizing her content, even outside of the standard. I think the help authoring tool outputs also do a pretty decent job. These are all from. I have no affiliation to any of the vendors. This happens to be from Flare. RoboHelp also similarly good quality mobile output. So it's not like, for most of us, the tools are that far out of reach, in my opinion. I'm not going to go into the decision process today about whether you need an app or a mobile site or a hybrid site, because that's enough for a whole presentation. But if you go down the route of wanting an app, then there are quite easy to use builders. This is from Appery. There's also a CSS and JavaScript framework called Bootstrap that I've heard good things about. Is very well documented, so obviously worth having a look purely from professional curiosity. And again, aimed at all levels of expertise. You don't need to be a developer. So as far as getting started is concerned, it is possible to start small. My colleague used to work for a major smartphone manufacturer, and this is a pilot that they did, and they originally started with a hand-coded app of 27 how-tos stroke FAQs that gradually grew, and once they got their content out there, they were starting to be able to look at how people were actually using it and gauge feedback. So making a start is important, because once you've made a start, you can make progress. Until you've started, you can't do anything. I'm probably am I the only presenter that's got female nudity? Just after the behaviour policy came in. So the second thing I'd like to talk about is that, the third myth is that mobile users are busy and distracted. And that leads us to make some information design mistakes. And there's two, really, it breaks down into. The idea of the tiny chunk and the arbitrary hiding of content. Yes, mobile users are busy and distracted, but so are desktop users. Desktop users are quite often distracted by their mobile devices. And we don't chop up content in strange ways or hide it from desktop users. And we shouldn't be doing the same with mobile users. So because we think of mobile users as constantly being on the go, we think of this sort of drip feeding of content to them. And chunking is really, really important for authors and managers, because if you've got that granular, semantically rich content, then you start being able to store it and manage it and interrogate it much more effectively. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to deliver it to users explicitly in that way. So it's there's a danger of a kind of a code bleed between your content model and what the users actually experience that I think may impair, if you're not careful, can impair the user experience. This is an example from BlackBerry, which is a sort of naive use of DITA, in that they've chopped things up very small and delivered it that way, so that you end up having, in order to find out how to change your alarm notification, you have to navigate through this tremendously deep hierarchy. And deep hierarchies can be very tricky, especially on small devices, because of what Jakob Nielsen calls the postbox effect. So you're trying to view it through this very small space, and it's then very easy to get lost in the hierarchy. And even if you do accept that the user is on the go, that degree of navigation can actually, again, impair the user experience. If, for example, they're using a slightly flaky Wi-Fi connection, or they're trying to download some information just before they go on the metro or the underground. So they'll get halfway there and then the signal fails, and that's potentially very frustrating. And again, as a lot of what we know, or we think we know about mobile, has been driven by e-commerce, which has some very specific requirements, like funneling the user into that checkout page and making sure they don't leave without buying something. And various experts have spent a lot of time trying to sort of articulate mobile behavior and to think of ways of understanding it. Google actually have 3 different mobile behaviors called bored now, which is kind of time-killing, Angry Birds, repetitive now, which is things like checking football scores or stock prices, and urgent now, which is I'm walking around trying to find this restaurant. And I don't find any of those particularly satisfying when it comes to how people consume technical content. But even so, even thinking about task orientation and goal orientation, context isn't necessarily a dirty word, because there is still needs for potentially more discursive and more long-form content that needs to work on a mobile device. So, for example, training. M-training is starting to grow and develop. People do pre- and post-purchase research, white papers, and things like microtasking. Like the other day I was on the train trying to work out how to use a particular formula in Excel, and I wasn't using Excel at the time. I was using that spare time to do a bit of research about a different product. So whatever the goal, context still matters. That said, people don't always read very much, and this is more work from Nielsen. I can't believe how much Nielsen I'm quoting in this presentation. As the words on the page go up, the view time goes up, but not proportionally. So people start to, at the top end of the word count, people start to kind of zone out a bit, which means that however you're delivering content, you still need to make it easily scannable. And you can look at the results of an eye tracking application to see where people are focusing on that piece of content. So really what we're looking at is smaller chunks to write in. So rather than necessarily deliver in those chunk sizes. So relevance, the relevance of the page length is important rather than some arbitrary measurement. People are actually very happy to scroll down if the content is hanging together in that sort of unit of relevance. So yeah, we need to be thinking about the content modeling process, the size of our chunks, and as always, even understanding that people will consume long-form content, we still need to be fat-free, we still need to use progressive disclosure, and we still need to be using responsive web design. And yes, a responsive web design is really important, but carelessly pouring content into a responsive template can actually render it meaningless. So a great front-end design can't rescue bad content, and it can be really tempting to think of the mobile user experience as something that's for front-end designers to worry about because they've got colored pencils and they've got great hair and they know about this stuff. And as long as you can sort of pinch and zoom and the screen moves around when you move the device, then that's all right. Not really. Acer, I don't know if there's anyone here from Acer. They did a great job designing their mobile support site. They've done a lot of nice, it fits beautifully into the space. They've done a lot with their search to minimize typing. But when you get to where you want the document that you want, it's a PDF and it's in a zip file and I can't open it. So, it's got them nowhere. Assuming too much context using expressions like the menu on the left or the paragraph below, you don't necessarily know where those are going to be in a responsive context. And as I don't really need to tell you this, but my local council did a lot of work making their website responsive, and they've done a nice job, it looks very nice, but they've not done anything with the writing, so there's some weird expressions. Extend login time to web interface from 20 to 200 minutes. This is the local library website. I have no idea what that means, and the fact that that's in a responsive design is helping nobody. Another problem that you might come across with responsive templates is what happens to inline links and whether the inline links still remain usable once your content becomes responsive. And as a DITA advocate, I'm tempted to say stay away from inline links because they inhibit reuse, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad for the user. And in certain forms of content, I think they can encourage exploration. As people are paying less for data, as data starts to become cheaper, then the problem of people tapping them by mistake maybe becomes less of a problem. They can actually, if you have all your related links at the bottom of the topic, there's a chance that if you've got bad readers, and most people are bad readers, they may not get to the related links because they may have gone off anyway. So there's questions to ask yourself as you're developing your mobile content, how you're going to approach related links. There's usually a conversation at some point in an information architecture process where someone will say, well, people can just search for this content. You may have also heard, well, can you just make it work like Google? And search is difficult because if you're not Google, chances are you've not got enough data to really make search effective. And search is difficult because users are rubbish at it. Most users can't do complicated searching. The sort of Boolean operators that are actually available in a search engine are very infrequently used by regular users. And on a mobile device, this problem is compounded by the fact that typing is fiddly, and it's very easy to make mistakes. So it's possible to mitigate the difficulty of search, for example, with effective use of synonyms. You can add filters, like have a faceted search. But really, browse is crucial. So you need to have a robust information architecture that offers related links and the right related links, that offers a structure that users can make sense of when they're looking for content, because they may not know the word that they're looking for, and recognition is better than recall. So DVLA managed to reduce searches for how to declare your car off-road by adding a SORN declaration link, and that cuts searches by 44%, because a lot of the time people didn't necessarily know that they were looking for make a SORN declaration. They just searched on TaxDisk and got a load of content about how to buy or renew a TaxDisk that wasn't relevant for them. So judicious use of related links, supporting browse, robust information architecture are all really important when you're thinking about mobile content. So the final myth that I'd like you to think about is this idea of mobile as being the companion experience, something that's for authors is a series of painful compromises. So it's like, okay, I've got all this content, I've got to squish it into a device this big. That's horrible. It leads us to this sort of arbitrary truncation and exclusion of content based on what we think people are going to be doing at a particular time. And that's increasingly a less tenable position to take, because the rise of the mobile-only consumer. So I think at the end of this year, we finally reached the point where there are more mobile devices than people. I think we can be proud of that. There are 6 billion mobile subscriptions in the world, and fewer than 3 billion people are using a desktop computer. And that's only going to go one way, because, as I said, the mobile device is offering affordable computing power to people who have never had it before. So if your content is aimed at people in the developing world, young people, people on low incomes, then there's a good chance that they're going to be consuming it through a mobile device and no other device. So that means that we can't assume that we know best. So at the moment, 32% of customers will choose to view the full site on their mobile device rather than the mobile site because they're looking for something that has been excluded from the mobile site for potentially quite arbitrary reasons. So yeah, we have to accept that multi-device usage is ubiquitous. Google's research from 2 years ago had multi-device usage at about 90%. And we also have to think about how the massive capabilities of these devices actually give us the opportunity to do more. So the devices that we have in our pocket, they have capabilities that were unheard of on the desktop. So geolocation, they know where people are, possibly in quite sinister ways. They can socialize with other people, and they can socialize with each other. So they know when another device is nearby, or they can do. The opportunity to capture information from the world around us, either in the form of multimedia, audio, photographs, or in the form of sensors, accelerometers, gyroscopes. Our devices belong to us, they're personal to us, they gather data about us, possibly in quite sinister ways. So that offers us, as writers, something that we've never really been able to really get at this point. So the number of sensors that devices have is starting to grow. I think Apple went from 3 to 5, Samsung went from 3 to 10. So fingerprints, heart rate, all kinds of things, all kinds of information from the world around us can be absorbed and processed by our mobile device. And that gives us the opportunity to actually tailor content much more precisely than we've been able to up to this point. Again, this is from a major smartphone manufacturer that my colleague used to work for. They used the activity on the device to actually be able to offer tips based on usage. So there was no data, there was no sort of scary data going back to a server somewhere. They were just measuring and looking at what the user was doing and supplying tips accordingly. So if someone was using the music player, it would pop up something like create a playlist for different times and different moods and offer a link to how you do that. And once someone had done a playlist, that would go away, but still be discoverable within the help architecture and the search and the browse. So obviously what you don't show is as important as what you do show. So yeah, devices are getting better all the time at assessing context. What have I just been doing? Did I make a mistake while I was doing it? What tasks do I do frequently? Who's in the room with me? Do I know them? But in order to exploit that, we need to be getting our content out onto devices, and we need to be able to get real facts and meaningful insights about what people want. So there's a quote from Karen McGrain there that I'll leave you to read briefly. So getting your content into a form that users can look at it and users can respond to it is really important. And then once you've done that, so there's a process of probably weeding out, thinning down, ruthlessly editing, trimming the fat from your content so that you're not sort of sending out bloated content that should be trimmed anyway. And then you can start researching what the priorities are, how you highlight and surface those priorities without necessarily hiding things that people might want. So yeah, that gives us an amazing opportunity to actually deliver help that, based on what we think people need. But we need to be careful, because the last time anybody tried this, it didn't always go too well. So as with all user assistance, there needs to be care and caution and understanding of the user. But I'm confident that we can do better this time around because of the amount of information coming into us through mobile devices, and the degree of personalization and tailoring that potentially offers us. So, based on all of this, don't underestimate the importance of mobile. Your content is going to need to be supported on a plethora of devices, including ones that you haven't even seen or heard of yet. It needs to be semantically enriched. It needs to be granular. Don't assume that you know what users are going to be doing or what device that people are going to be using to consume that content. Before you do anything, focus on quality content, well-structured. And don't rely on tools and architectures to give you all of the answers. They are important, but really what counts is having content that works and that can be structured and manipulated in different ways. And finally, use your mobile superpowers. These devices can do amazing things. They can understand where an engineer is, what he's working on, feed her the appropriate content, and that's an incredible capability that we've not had before. So go out and use them. So, thank you. Has anyone got any questions?
About using features like Google Voice and videos,
Mm-hmm.
is it a good idea to have them in your mobile site?
It depends what you're trying to do, I think. I think that sort of information capturing has a lot of potential when it comes to communicating with support teams. So instead of phone calls or emails, you actually have the opportunity to say, look, is it meant to be this color, or have I done this right? And there's opportunities for better supporting users from that point of view. I think you have to make a judgment about if you're actually going to have embedded content, embedded multimedia in your mobile site. You have to make some judgment calls about whether the user's going to be able to get at them, and also to be able to hide them elegantly if they're not accessible, rather than having a box where it was supposed to be. So that you start to use sort of single sourcing and variable management to make sure that the experience is right for the person that's using the device. Does that help? Anyone else?
Okay, so since we have no more questions, so we'd all like to thank Rachel for a very fascinating presentation.
Thank you. If there are any Ditter users in the room, can I pimp my Twitter feed, Bite-Size Ditter? It's quite early days for it at the moment, but we're trying to get activity from the Ditter community. Ask us questions. My colleagues at Mekon will do our best to answer them. We're starting to write some small digestible articles that we're sharing through the Bite-Size Ditter feed, and it'd be nice to get some more followers for that if anyone's interested. Thank you.